the really sad part, Dunnigan, whatever happens, there won't be a happy ending. Whatever happens, there will not be a happy ending. That's what you can really take away. There won't be a happy ending. And, it's all here and now. It's so interesting. A couple of years ago, we were talking about, this down the road, this is going to get nasty, nasty, nasty. Well, it ain't down the road anymore. We have kicked the can down the road, and now there's no more road. We're finally at the point where there's no more road. So make of it what you want. What happens when you get to the end of the road? You're either in the ditch, you're in the woods, or you stop.
This is Dunnigan Kaiser, founder of Liberty and Finance. I'm now a licensed gold and silver dealer with Miles Franklin. Call me directly for the physical gold and silver that you need at the best price with personalized, private service from one of the oldest and best respected companies in the business. 30 years strong, A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, 0 complaints, licensed and bonded, insured delivery or vault storage or IRAs, excellent prices, privacy and confidentiality, pay by check, money order, ACH or wire, satisfaction guaranteed. Call me directly at 419-819-9209 or my associate at 310-562-6400 or email us at kaiser@milesfranklin.com. Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We have a returning guest our viewers always look forward to because he tells it like he sees it. This is Rob Kirby, proprietary analyst and founder of Kirby Analytics. He's joining us this Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. Rob, thanks for coming back on.
Wonderful to be with you again, Dunnigan.
Strange
times we're living in.
Well, that's the first thing we better talk about. There are so many strange things that we don't know where to start, other than that this week, this day, and tomorrow are scheduled to be the transition of administrations in the United States, where many people believe it's long overdue. Other people believe it's completely inappropriate and unconstitutional, and so we need to, with your help, examine that a little bit closer. Some people are calling it the end of our constitutional republic because the Constitution no longer seems to be applied, and the question is, can we have a representative republic if we can't trust the integrity of voting? So those are serious concerns. Can you share with us, as you have in the past, your view of from the other side of the border up in Canada, what you see looking into the U.S. and your experience?
Well, as I hinted, I'm going to make Dunnigan $1 billion Reichsmark bet with you that Joe Biden will not be president tomorrow night. Or I'm willing to bet $100 trillion, Zimbabwean, of course, that Joe Biden will not be president tomorrow night. So that's where I'm coming from.
Those expectations are in line with the last time you visited us, when you thought that the U.S. military would uphold their duty to repel threats, foreign and domestic. So maybe you can expand on that.
Rumor has it, Dunnigan, there's 60,000 American military in Washington. An F-16 detachment has been activated, and Patriot missile batteries have been installed. My understanding is in Washington, Kentucky, Georgia, and where else? There was another state, Tennessee, I believe. So those are the places where allegedly Patriot missile batteries have been installed. Why have Patriot missile batteries been deployed in the continental United States for an inauguration of Joe Biden?
Yeah, normally those are anti-aircraft, right?
Yeah. Well, Patriot missiles are used to shoot down cruise missiles. So do the math. What's up?
I think a lot of people don't know what's up, but we'd be eager for your opinion and your thoughts on where that may be heading.
Well, I mean, it reeks of war, doesn't it? The preparations that are being made in Washington are not for an inauguration. The preparations that have been made in Washington are for war. And that's just a matter of fact. I mean, 50 Stryker vehicles in Washington, Patriot missile batteries in at least 4 states. This is not preparation for an inauguration or a bunch of Trump people marching on state capitals. Patriot missile batteries are not required to repel Trump supporters. So it reeks of preparation for war. I'm just reporting what I believe to be accurate, and the preparations that are being made are for war, not for an inauguration. So you can use your imagination to discern who might want to have war with America.
There have been plenty of stories circulating, I guess all of them unverified from my awareness, which is very limited, on the potential for foreign forces on various borders of the U.S. But a lot of this discussion also circles back around to what you've been talking about for years with us, and that's the epic battle of globalists versus nationalists. Once again, your thoughts on what's actually transpiring.
Globalists are aligned with communists, and globalists want to have their way with America. And globalists have been having their way with America. And what it really comes down to, Dunnigan, will they not only put the icing on the cake, will they put the sprinkles and light the candles too? So we're going to find out, I believe, in the next 24 hours. America will either remain a republic or America will fall.
This that you're describing would be the most, I guess, eventful of all of those things in one day. That leaves people wondering, ordinary people wondering, what's next for them? What's next?
Well, I mean, 60,000 troops in Washington, D.C., is not preparation for an inauguration, any way you slice it. And that's reportedly the number, at least. I mean, the numbers range probably from a low end of 30,000. And I mean, the latest numbers I've heard this morning are possibly upwards of 60,000 troops currently in Washington, D.C. And if anybody believes that is preparation for inauguration, I think you should really get your head examined, because that is not preparation. It's not lost on me also, Dunnigan, that there's also issues, and I believe I've spoken at length with you on this platform in the past about the work of Dr. Mark Skidmore, Catherine Austin Fitts, and many tens of trillions of dollars, many tens of trillions that have gone missing chiefly through the DOD, Department of Defense. I mean, wasn't it interesting that there was an article that was published by Bloomberg just yesterday talking about how the Pentagon is now missing, apparently over a 2-year stretch, I believe it was 2018 and 19, there's another 35 trillion missing from those 2 years. That's coming from Bloomberg. Not crazies like Dr. Skidmore and Catherine Austin Fitts. This is now Bloomberg reporting that the Pentagon, they can't find $35 trillion. Well, given that the GDP of America is around 23 trillion, how in the hell these guys lost 35 trillion in 2 years? That's a great question. Very supportive that an awful lot more money is being printed than we are being told, which is what I've been maintaining forever. So, you know what? People need to smell the coffee and wake up, because our world is not as it's presented to us, period. And if you believe 60,000 troops in Washington, D.C. is the sign of an inauguration, think again. Think again.
From Canadian experience up there, where you have seemingly tame developments, what do you see as the likely options that the ordinary person has looking forward to? We don't know what we're going to wake up to in the next couple of days here in terms of what's going to be left of our country and our Constitution. Where do you think that leaves ordinary people?
Well, I mean, I don't want anyone to begin believing that I think that we live in the land of honey here in Canada. I don't approve of the leadership we have here in Canada. I believe that our leader federally, Justin Trudeau, is a complete sellout and a traitorous piece of garbage to our country. I'm sorry I feel that way. I'm embarrassed to say he is the leader of my country. And to be honest with you, I don't even like uttering the words. I judge the man by his actions. He speaks very fondly of totalitarian leaders in the world. He's very fond of the communist Chinese style of leadership. That doesn't sit well with me. But all that being said, Canada appears to be, by I think most people's accounts, to be a somewhat tame or a tamer version, much tamer version of what you guys are currently experiencing in the United States. So my position and my thought process has long been that when the inevitable occurs in your country, we probably, because I have felt that a civil war was coming in your country for many years, in fact, and I've been publicly speaking about it. And I think we ultimately very likely end up with an immigration crisis in Canada. I can see a scenario unfolding where we have possibly tens of millions of Americans trying to get into Canada, seeking refuge. And you see, we can't handle that here. And that would imply mayhem here in Canada. So this is a real jackpot. We are all in, because we are all going to share the pain if the inevitable happens in your country. So, and I mean, you guys still possess the world's reserve currency for the time being. And as such, what goes on with the American dollar is of concern to every country in the world, because that is still the currency of account for international trade settlement. So it's not really like what goes on with the American dollar is simply a matter to be left to Americans. We're all connected to the dollar. No currency in the world is connected to anything tangible like gold or silver. No currency in the world is directly convertible officially into gold or silver or anything tangible. So as a result, we all have a vested interest in what occurs with the dollar. And the dollar really is my focus, more so than geopolitical stuff. But, you know, I can't help but noticing, I mean, people are talking about a transition of power. And I mean, a transition of power in your country historically has meant a peaceable transition from one party to the other party, a two-party system. And I mean, what I see unfolding does not look like a peaceful transition of power. It looks to me like we're preparing for war. So, you know, take away the 60,000 troops and have all the Patriot missile batteries go back to where they came from, and I'll start believing that we're having a peaceful transition of power. End of story. So, can't help it. That's what I see. Like when I see black clouds, I don't think of sun. You know, I think of a storm. And we have one bad storm coming our way, you know, and I could use some adjectives to put before the word storm, but I'm not going to do that here. But that's what I see coming. And it's not pretty and it doesn't smell good.
Just a few moments ago, you had made the transition from talking about physical preparations, you know, these armaments and that sort of thing, versus the trillions, tens of trillions of missing money. What are the tie-ins that you see there, how those are related from a strategic standpoint?
Well, listen, I don't think it's a coincidence, done again, unless you believe in coincidences, that isn't it interesting? We have this supposed transition of power that's unfolding before us, in Washington, which to me looks an awful lot like preparation for a war. And the day before this is all likely to go down, we've got none other than Bloomberg saying that there's another 35 trillion missing from DoD coffers. Boy, can you connect dots? What does that picture look like? Hey, what wasn't it the day before 9/11? It was Rumsfeld, who was the acting Secretary of Defense, I believe, at the time. He said that there was 3 trillion missing from DoD coffers the day before 9/11. Wow! And the next day, the Pentagon was attacked, and supposedly a plane flew into the Pentagon, and guess where it happened to hit? The very area where all the financials were kept. So the whole mystery of the missing 3 trillion, it was erased from everybody's memory because the records were all conveniently destroyed. Wow. What do you think is going to happen tomorrow? 35 trillion was announced yesterday as missing. What do you think is going down tomorrow? Do you think it's going to be a peaceful inauguration? Not me. Don't think that. Sorry. You know, they say history repeats, and sometimes they say it doesn't repeat, it rhymes. Holy jumping. Something's rhyming here in a big way.
At a bigger scale. I mean, that's...
Well, of course. The more trillions that go missing, the bigger the story has to be to hide it.
And as you pointed out in the past, the original 21 trillion missing that was discovered by Dr. Mark Skidmore and his research team and further publicized by
again.
Catherine Fisk.
Done again.
Yeah.
Let's point this out, okay? Let's be clear on this. The initial investigation by Skidmore and Fitz covered a period of time from 1998 to 2015, and it was 21 trillion over that time period. Okay, so that's 17 years. 21 trillion went missing. Okay, but now the amounts involved in a shorter time period are growing bigger, bigger, bigger. You see, but this is the whole nature. This is the whole unstable nature of fiat money with compound interest, as we've talked about before on this platform. The amount of money that needs to be created in a fiat regime with compound interest grows exponentially. It's like it's logarithmic.
Understood.
So the amount of money that needed to be created, we are on a vertical curve. The amount of money that had to be created last year will be eclipsed by the amount of money that needs to be created this year. And it's going up geometrically. It's not increasing in a linear fashion. So, you see, it took 17 years for them to basically fritter away 21 trillion. And now 35 trillion disappears in 2 years. In the next 2 years, it's probably going to be 50 trillion. But you see, the whole point to bringing all this up, Dunnigan, it's unstable. And it's unsustainable. Because, and I've said on this platform, the real issue these clowns have that are in control of our monetary affairs, the real problem they have is where do they put the new tens of trillions they must create. And, you know, if you want to pay attention, this is why we have equity prices continuing to spiral upward despite half of our economy being shut down. And this is why we're seeing the growth and the explosive action occurring in the cryptoverse, with cryptocurrencies doubling and quadrupling in relatively short periods of time, because the amount of money that's being created is finding its way into other financial assets. And, you know, and people say, well, okay, Rob, but why isn't it showing up in gold and silver? Well, because gold and silver futures are the determinants of their price. And gold and silver futures were created with the express purpose of suppressing the price and trying to quell demand for physical metal. So, you see, gold and silver futures are behaving exactly as they were designed to suppress the price. Cryptocurrencies with blockchain protocols are also behaving exactly as they were designed, because they were designed to emulate honest money. And they're working fine and dandy. When you design something that is supposed to emulate honest money, it looks like honest money, and it reacts as honest money should. It goes up in price when you debase the currency in nominal terms. But of course, precious metal, because the world has been hoodwinked into believing that the price on COMEX and the price on LBMA, London Bullion Market Association, where infinite amounts of paper contracts are sold, supposedly representing the underlying physical, which it doesn't, we have this disparity, and it's ridiculous. It's dystopic, it's fraud, and it's fraud on a scale humanity has never seen ever before. So this is what's going on. This is what will continue, because we have no will anywhere in the Western world to regulate and to apply proper regulation to metal or metals pricing. And as long as regulators allow the powers that be to sell infinite amounts of contracts of metal that will never exist, will never be mined, their prices will remain suppressed. But most people, I think by now know, for instance, Bitcoin, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins. You can't sell Bitcoins that don't exist, and blockchain protocol ensures that that is the case. So that's why the price of cryptocurrencies are going up, because they have limited supply. And precious metal, which, I find it's ironic in a sense, Dunnigan. Cryptocurrencies are virtual. That you don't own Bitcoin in physical form. There is no physical token for Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. It exists in ledgerdom. It exists in digital form. Precious metal is real, and it's rare, and it has to be mined out of the Earth's crust. And yet we have mechanisms in place where you can sell infinite amounts of something that's very precious and very rare. You see. And if people are thinking that I'm sort of speaking against something I preached for a long time, owning physical precious metal, I'm not in the least. You see, the selling of metal that doesn't exist is an unsustainable act. And my belief has always been that this will not continue forever, and that this will break down. And metals will eventually be priced accordingly to their rareness and to their true value and to their long-standing function as real money. And, this will happen. I can't tell you the day it's going to happen. I still believe it will happen. But cryptocurrencies are acting as surrogate metal. That's what they're acting as. Cryptocurrencies are acting as they were designed to act, as honest money.
Yeah.
Precious metal, which is honest money, is not allowed to behave like honest money, because we have futures exchanges that sell infinite amounts of it to suppress the price. That's what's going on. So wake up. You see, that is as clear to me as having Patriot missile batteries and 60,000 troops in Washington is not the sign of a peaceful transition of power. So, wake up. Just wake up.
You mentioned there Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies acting as true money, sound money is supposed to. E.B. Tucker, who joined us on this channel several months ago, talked about gold is the reason that the banks feel that they must suppress gold is because it is a truth serum, and it will tell the truth about what's going on in the financial mishandling. And it sounds like Bitcoin is, for the moment, as you pointed out in the past, being permitted to reveal the truth, but only to help to improve the image of the concept of cryptocurrencies in the popular mind. The other mention you just made recently was about this explosion of currency creation that has to be shoved somewhere, and it's showing up in the equity markets, even though the economies are shut down. And you mentioned mainstream sources like Bloomberg talking about the 35 trillion of new missing money. Also, a mainstream source, Reuters, just came out a couple days ago.
Dunnigan, one thing to be clear on here: the 35 trillion that Bloomberg reported yesterday, that's a different pile of money,
yes,
or a pile of buffalo chips than the 21 trillion initially reported.
Got it.
I mean, Dr. Skidmore has done work on the later years, and there's tens of trillions more missing. You see, this is a problem that's getting worse and worse and worse. And this can mathematically be explained. You know, go to Chris Martinson's website, watch the crash course, watch the segment and the crash course on the power of compounding. And this is compounding. We are witness to the effects of the compounding factor with fiat money.
Yes.
That's what we are witnessing.
And I just want to throw one more.
That's why all this. Yeah, go
one
ahead.
more official log on that fire from reported by Reuters just a couple days ago. We'll include a link in this. Is quoting the managing director Kristalina Georgieva of the IMF, calling for. She said governments should spend and spend more in terms of policies for right now. Starting March 1st, I would go out and I would say, please spend as much as you can, and then spend a little bit more. I continue to advocate for monetary policy accommodation and fiscal policies that protect the economy from collapse at a time when we are on purpose restricting both production and consumption. So the IMF head is calling for countries to spend more than they can afford to right now to prevent collapse.
Yeah, well, listen. Another person who used to be the head of the IMF, Christine Lagarde, I believe was her name. She's now the head of the European Central Bank. And she posted her concerns about the dramatic rise in the price. And she labeled Bitcoin as the offender. And she said, we have to do something to keep Bitcoin in a box. I mean, she was very concerned about the dramatic rise in the price of Bitcoin. Well, this is only, Christine, this is only the rise that should have been accruing to gold. But you and your wonderful people who control the world's financial levers have put in place mechanisms to suppress the nominal price of gold. And I mean, the nominal price of gold, like that which we see on the COMEX exchange and reported from London, has very little to do with the real price that's being paid for physical metal in the real world, because those are two completely different prices. And the premiums being paid for physical metal at different times throughout the past 10 years have blown out significantly to very significant premiums over the false futures price that we are being told is representative of, what real money's worth. But you're having a lot of trouble doing that Houdini act. You see, this is like David Copperfield. I mean, what's occurred with gold and the pricing of gold is a lot like David Copperfield making a Learjet disappear behind a curtain, okay? And Bitcoin is like Toto the dog who pulls the curtain back and shows that the Learjet didn't disappear at all. It's right there, and along with all the money, and what Bitcoin is doing, Bitcoin is blowing the whistle on how much money's being created. Where do you think all the money's come from that's going into Bitcoin? Where do you think it came from? It didn't fall out of the sky. Well, actually, it probably did fall out of the sky. It came from nowhere. It was conjured out of thin air. It was printed into existence. And the issue, everybody, is that more and more and more needs to be printed out of thin air to keep this Ponzi scheme going. And it will continue until someone says no mas. We are living in a monetary crack house. We need to shut the crack house down. Too much crack kills.
We've been focusing on the dollar, but a lot of attention about a potential fiat collapse or banking system failure that could take down the whole dependent banking system is somewhat focused on Europe from time to time. Joseph Gadsby asks, would Rob explain why the euro remains strong while EU bank fundamentals are much worse than US banks? EU banks have huge amounts of dollars and more through dollar swaps, so why haven't they failed?
Negative interest rates. Negative interest rates. That's why. European governments are not saddled with the same problem that Americans have. And Americans, I know, would like, let's just put it this way when I say Americans. When I talk about Americans in a monetary sense, I'm talking about the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve would like to go to negative, like nominal negative rates. Mm-hmm. But they know if they go to nominal negative rates, the world will abandon their currency. And, we have long talked, or at least I've long talked about on your platform, I've talked about how this story, this awful story ends one day. It ends in hyperinflation. And people have said to me, for many years, they said to me, back in the double O's, like 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, people said to me, well, Rob, where's all the money going to come from for this hyperinflation you say is coming? Well, Dr. Skidmore and Catherine Fitz have certainly shown where the money's coming from. Mm-hmm. It's being hidden from our view. 21 trillion of it that isn't reported by the mainstream was created between 1998 and 2015. And let's just say years subsequent to 2015, many tens of trillions have been created on top of that. So the money is there, and financial assets have been hyperinflating. Bitcoin is a great example of, when people say, where's the hyperinflation? Well, Bitcoin is an example of hyperinflating of a financial asset because there are too many dollars in the system. It's occurring in front of our eyes. But people don't want to recognize it for what it is. Just like people don't want to recognize that 60,000 troops in Washington, D.C. is not the sign of a peaceful transition of power. Okay, so I can't help you. If you see 60,000 troops and Patriot missile batteries and 50 Stryker vehicles in Washington, D.C. as a sign of a peaceful transition of power, carry on. I can't help you. And there's no point listening to me. There's no point listening to anything if you believe that. Good luck to you. Also
looking for how this affects ordinary people, we have a lot of aging population, the demographics, the baby boomer generation getting ready, hopefully, for retirement, but they're seeing this negative or zero interest rate, near zero interest rate environment where they can't make any money on their fixed incomes or fixed rate investments, that sort of thing. A lot of the pension plans are in trouble because they were counting on being able to make 7% a year on investments. Constantine Walker says, are all the pension funds investing in the stock markets, all of their assets? How will this play out in real life?
Listen, Dunnigan, increasingly, because people can't make their nut on their fixed income portion of their portfolios, and most people who invest are encouraged by investment advisors and by the banks and the moneyed elite. We're convinced, or they try to brainwash us into believing that you should have somewhere between 40 and 60% of your investable assets in fixed income. So when you commit 40 to 60% of your investment portfolio to something that has a negative real return, because we have inflation, even if you believe the lying inflation numbers of 2%, we have a 10-year treasury yield of what? What is it now? Is it over 1?
It's been dancing
around
it's been
one.
It's
been as low as 60 basis points. But I mean, that doesn't cut it if you want to live off your investments. So that's the problem. Okay, and people say, well, interest rates are low because there's so much demand for U.S. government debt. No foreigners are buying U.S. government debt. Foreign demand has disappeared. All U.S. debt is effectively accruing on the Federal Reserve's balance sheet currently, or disappearing into black holes like the Exchange Stabilization Fund. You see, the $21 trillion that Fitz and Skidmore initially reported on from 98 to 2015, none of that appeared on the Fed's balance sheet. The $35 trillion that Bloomberg reported on yesterday, that didn't accrue on the Fed's balance sheet either. It disappears into black holes. It disappears into places like the Exchange Stabilization Fund that doesn't report financials and isn't accountable to anyone. But then it's used to accomplish things like keeping the dollar looking strong. So it's used in the foreign exchange market. Some of it finds its way into the equity market. Some of it finds its way into the crypto markets. The problem is they've got so many trillions of money that they don't know where to put. It leaks out somewhere. And that's exactly what we're witnessing. Sorry, beg your pardon. But this is what's going on. This is what's going on. It's been going on for a very, very, very long time. And there you go. And and a lot of people say, well, Rob, if what you're saying is true, then then surely the bond vigilantes would notice this and they would sell off U.S. government debt. Well, you know what? Foreigners have rejected U.S. government debt, and rates haven't really gone appreciably higher. So that doesn't really work in the real world, or in the world we've been forced to live in. The other thing, too, that I'd like to just point out, derivatives are used to keep rates at ridiculously artificial rates. Between fourth quarter of 2019 and the first quarter of 2020, the aggregate derivatives positions of U.S. banks increased by a factor of about 40 trillion in aggregate. And over that period of time, and that's in the first quarter of 2020, last year, in that first quarter, the aggregate notional derivatives on books of U.S. banks increased by 40 trillion. And isn't it interesting that in Q1 of 2020, the 10-year bond yield went from 180 basis points down to 60? Mm-hmm. And that's what 40 trillion in notional derivatives buys you in the bond market. It collapses interest rates. And the interest rates were collapsed because the U.S. government can't afford to pay market rates of interest because they're insolvent. They're broke. And the cryptocurrency market is telling us that. And the gold and silver market would be telling us that also, except it's not allowed because the trillions that they're creating are being used to sell naked futures and suppress the price. Ain't working in the crypto market, though, is it?
We've got a question related to this. You've talked about equity prices being a stuffing ground for some of these excess dollars. Ride the Curve says, what conditions need to exist for gold and silver miners to diverge from the stock market when and if it takes a dump? Can we expect those to always go down together?
Regulators have to start regulating, or they have to be hung. One or the other. But that will happen. That will happen. Just like there won't be a peaceable transition of power in Washington.
I believe when you talk about regulating, you're talking about regulating the precious metals market. This is a question about gold and silver mining equities as opposed to the broader stock market.
Okay, well, gold and silver mining shares.
Yes.
If gold and silver are ever allowed to express themselves in a free market, the price of gold and mining shares will look a lot like Amazon, Netflix, Tesla, or your favorite flavor of high tech company. I mean, isn't it crazy? You know, we live in a world where regulators and lawmakers fear the notion of mining stocks going up ballistically. But it's completely okay for Tesla to trade at 8,000 times earnings. But mining shares are kept in a box because the price of the underlying product is kept in a box. Because it makes their stewardship of the world's reserve currency look like they're doing a responsible job. And they're not. They're not doing a responsible job. They have failed humanity. And it will become, in my view, it's very evident now. But, we have what do they call bitter clingers? We have bitter clingers who want to believe that 60,000 troops in Washington for an inauguration and Patriot missile batteries and 50 Stryker vehicles has no consequence or meaning. Think about that.
You mentioned several times here the lack of enforcement on the COMEX. There's the question here about, can we just replace that pricing mechanism altogether? Donald Robinson says, why haven't we created an alternative pricing mechanism to end the manipulation on the COMEX? For example, average of ask prices from top 5 dealers ready and willing to be able to quote and ship the same day.
Well, so I think the question is, why hasn't gold and silver moved to a cash and carry market? Mm-hmm. It will. It hasn't yet, but it will. And the reason for that is we have regulators that don't regulate. You see, the whole idea of having a group called the CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, these guys are supposed to prevent from happening what has happened. But they didn't do their job, okay? They didn't do their job. They lied to us. They told us that they were protecting the little guy, or they have this mantra that they're there as the ombudsman to look after the little guy and make sure that the little guy's rights aren't trampled. Well, guess what? That's not really what they do, okay? Instead, what they do is they protect the establishment and they protect big money. They protect the banking system. They defend the dollar, because that's really what their real job is to defend the dollar and make sure that the dollar remains as the world's reserve currency. And if gold and silver rise dramatically in price, it becomes very evident very quickly to people, because that's an historic marker for a currency that's failing. And these people do not want to be any part of having the appearance of being part of a failed currency regime, because that means that the dollar isn't worthy of being the world's reserve currency, and that would diminish American prestige in the world and American control in the world. And I don't even think America's run by Americans anymore. America's run by globalists, and it's the globalists who want control. And it's the globalists who have control for now. But they're losing control. And that's why they're very antsy and very worried. And that's why America wasn't allowed to have an election with transparency. I mean, you can argue all you want about who won the election, but let's just say it's been less than transparent. Mm-hmm. Regardless of who you think won, it hasn't been transparent. And the people that don't want transparency in elections are the same people that don't want transparency in money. And they're called globalists.
Speaking of things that aren't wanting transparency, or about which transparency is not wanted by some in the power positions, we've had dozens and dozens of independent media sites get deplatformed off of many different major social media platforms. We're always wondering, are we on our last thread? You had encouraged us months ago to venture out into other platforms. And so, folks, three things. One, if you go to libertyandfinance.com, put your name in the an email in the left-hand margin there. You can get our free newsletter so we can stay in touch with you no matter what happens on YouTube with our channel. Secondly, you'll also find us on Brighteon, looks like this. You'll also find us on Rumble, looks like this.
I'll bet you this much, it doesn't appear on YouTube. 100 trillion. Zimbabwean.
So that we can stay in touch with you, Rob, and people can reach out and find out more about what you've written, where should they look you up?
You can catch me on the web at kirbyanalytics.com. Coming to a theater near you soon. It's a $1 million American banknote. Coming to a theater near you soon. You know, don't laugh. You're going to see it. $1 million American dollars. You're going to see it.
Actually, the way they've been getting us, taking away the right to use cash, first they eliminated the $1,000 bill, the $500 bill. Now you can hardly get 100. They're getting down to where 20s. And as the value is devalued of the currency, it's getting to be where paper money is just chicken feed. It's hardly worth the paper it's printed on.
There you go.
Well, we've been speaking with Rob Kirby, proprietary analyst, founder of KirbyAnalytics.com. Rob, as always, thank you for joining us here on Liberty and Finance.
It's been my pleasure, done again, and I want to wish you and all of your listeners, your watchers, I want to wish them good luck. You're going to need it.
If you've decided that now is the right time for you to protect your family's financial future by acquiring physical precious metals, gold and silver, I'm delighted to let you know that I have now become a licensed dealer's representative for Miles Franklin, one of the oldest and most trusted names in bullion dealerships. And we can provide you with physical delivery to your personal possession or to professional vault storage or precious metals IRAs. Just email me at libertyandfinance@protonmail.com and please include your name and phone number in your email to libertyandfinance@protonmail.com. We'll get right back with you and find out how to best meet your needs so that you can either begin or increase your acquisition of physical precious metals now and protect your family's future starting today.